Hi there, and welcome to Charity's Vegan Kitchen. Today's tutorial will be on our Artisan Baguette mix. When you receive your mix, you're going to receive it in a packet like this that will bring your actual flour mixture, a packet of yeast, and a packet of dusting flour along with your instructions. There will be a QR code, obviously, that would bring you to this video to make it easier to help you along your baking journey. When we're working with yeast, we want to ensure that the water that we're using is not hot. We want it to be warm, warm to touch. Anything over 110 degrees will start to kill off your yeast. Once you've reached 120 degrees, your yeast is no longer good. I like to stay between 100 and 104 degrees. I find that the yeast loves that temperature and gets happy very quickly. So let's start our Artisan Baguette mix. So you're going to use your 1 3/4 cups of warm water and pour that into a deep bowl or food bucket. I have a 6-quart bucket here. You want to allow room to rise because your dough is going to rise. And then you're just going to add your yeast mixture. And you want to use a spatula and just mix it up a little bit. Once you've combined your water and your yeast to create a slurry, we're going to set that aside and let it sit for 20 minutes. So now that our yeast slurry is ready, what we're going to do is simply just shake up our mix, make sure that we're incorporating all of the ingredients. And you're going to need either a dough whisk or you can use a wooden spoon to stir it up. And I always like to have a spatula on hand. Once we've shaken up our mix, we're just going to dump it in. And then you're just going to stir it. You're stirring it together. Once it seems slightly incorporated, I like to kind of take from the bottom and twist up. So once your dough is incorporated, it's going to be very thick and clumpy and sticky, and that's what we want. Just want to get everything off my whisk. Don't like to have any waste here. This beautiful dough. And then I like to scrape off the sides of my container. And that's it. This is what we have. Now we're going to set this aside and we're going to slightly cover it. You want to leave some space for the gases to come out. And we're going to let this prove for 95 minutes. Okay, so our baguette mix has risen. Isn't that beautiful? Now this isn't quite a sticky dough. So you're going to want to take your dusting flour, put it in a bowl so you have access to it. And you're going to want to sprinkle over the top, trying to touch the surfaces of the edges of your container so that you can pull the dough away. Now, I actually prefer to refrigerate the dough for 2 to 4 hours. I find that when the dough is cold, it's easier to work with. But you can definitely bake it right away. That's what I'm going to do now. So you're going to want to flour your hands as well. Again, this is a very sticky dough. So as you can see, I'm applying some flour to the edges and I'm just using my hands to pull away until it's come apart from the bowl. And if your hands start getting sticky, just grab a little bit more flour. You can totally use a scale to weigh your dough out so that your loaves are perfectly even. So what you would do is you would take a bowl with your dusting flour, put that on top of your scale, tear it out, and then go ahead and put your dough in that bowl. Make sure to dust off any excess, that way it doesn't stick to the bowl. But I'm just going to freeform it. So now that I've scooped it all out, I'm going to flour my surface really good. And so now is when you would, as soon as you're done with this, you would want to go and preheat your oven to 450. Beautiful and pliable. And when it is refrigerated, it is a little bit heavier. So I just want to make sure that it's on a very floured surface, again, because it's a very sticky dough. And I'm just going to divide my dough in half. You can pull it apart. You can use kitchen scissors. I like to use the scissors when I'm working with a lot of dough. It's easier to just cut it out of the bucket this way. But I'm just going to eye it on this one. It's important to use items that are commonly found in the house, because I know that not everyone has every kitchen gadget out there. And so all we're going to do is just shape it a little bit. I like to shape it into an elongated little loaf because I know that I'm going to eventually stretch it out. And so all I'm doing is I'm tucking it into itself and I'm pulling at the same time. So I'm tucking it in and I'm pulling and tucking in and pulling. You want to make sure that you maintain a very good floured surface so that your dough doesn't stick. And when you get to about 6 to 8 inches, you're going to let that dough rest for about 15 minutes. If your dough was cold, you're going to want to let it rest for a good 20 minutes. And we're going to let that sit there. We're going to go ahead and shape our other dough as well. Could be messy. I love working with bread. In culinary school, it was one of my favorite courses. Okay, so we're going to let those prove for 15 minutes and we will be back. So we preheated our oven to 450, and I'm going to include at the bottom of the oven an extra baking tin. So baguettes are known for their crunchy exterior, and we need to have some steam in there, and that's what's going to give it its crunchy exterior. So I'm going to put this in the oven while it's preheating. And then once we put our baguettes in the oven, we wait 5 minutes and then we throw in some water, and that steam is going to rise in there, and that's what's going to give you your crunchy crust. So you can bake your baguettes different ways. You can use a pizza stone or a cast iron stone. You can just do it on a sheet pan, or this is my favorite, you can use a baguette pan. Now, I don't like the ones with the non-stick. I just get the aluminum ones, and they work great for me. Now, what I like to do is always use parchment paper at the bottom of my bread. So whatever surface I'm placing it on, whether I'm putting it on the baking stone, whether I'm using a sheet pan, whether I'm using my baguette pan, I'm putting a piece of parchment paper on the bottom. This makes it easier. I know some people don't like to bake with parchment, and that's fine. You don't have to do it. Just make sure you flour your surface really well. Okay, so now that we got our first mini proven, we're going to go ahead and shape our doughs and get them ready for baking. So I'm going to bake one on a baguette pan, and I'm going to bake one on the baking stone so that you can see the difference. The baguette pans will keep the rounded bottoms, whereas the stone will have a flatter bottom and your bread will spread a little bit more and it won't be as voluminous on top. So again, we're going to use our parchment paper and we're going to flour our surface. And I have a separate parchment paper for my baguette pan. Put it in the middle for even heat distribution. Okay, so what I'm going to do, again, make sure to flour your hands, still sticky dough. And then I'm just, now that the dough has relaxed, it's easier to work with. So whenever you build up the gluten, whenever you feel that your dough is tight, that means the gluten is really tense. So you want to let it sit for a few minutes and let it relax, and then it's easier to manipulate. So you want to kind of just stretch it in. You can turn it on its back and kind of bring each edge in and press down towards the center, and do the same thing for the other side. Tightening that a little bit. And then we'll round it out. And you can cook it anywhere between 12 inches to 16 to 18 inches. Now, if you're going to do the longer versus the shorter version of the baguette, you want to let it prove a little bit more. So we're going to put this one on our stone. And we'll shape it. And to shape the corners, you're going to pinch from the bottom in. Okay. And we're going to shape this one. Again, just kind of slightly pull as we're shaping. We're going to tip it on its back, bring it in and press slightly. You don't want to go through to the other side of the dough. And then we'll do the same thing. So you end up having a crease down the center of the dough, and then you're going to flip it back over. Make sure to keep your surfaces nicely floured so you don't have any sticking. And then you'll just transport that onto your pan. And for longer loaves, I like to use two of the baguette tins together. And then that way you're able to stretch your dough just a little bit more. And if your ends are not pointed and you want them the traditional point, you just kind of roll it in with your fingers and use that to point it. There are some air bubbles in there. Beautiful. We don't want to touch those. And so now I'm going to let it prove for like another 10 minutes. But before we do that, I'm just going to lightly flour the surface. Now, typically, some baguettes are made with wash. We're vegan, so we wouldn't use an egg wash. But you can use butter. Some people like to use milk. I actually like the floured tops of the baguettes. So I'm going to go ahead and score them. Again, we're going to do diagonal. I'm going to show you with the serrated knife, or you can use your scoring tool. Either one works. And you're going to go at an angle diagonally, and you're going to do 3 scores. If you decide to make a smaller loaf, you only need 2 scores. So we're going to use our serrated knife, and I'm going to go at an angle, and I'm going to pull away. And again, you don't want to go in too deep, just a slight angle. Beautiful. And for this one, we're going to use my scoring tool, again, at an angle. Make sure your surface is nicely floured so that you don't have any sticking. And so because this one's a little bit longer, because I did tend to pull it out towards the 18 inches, you can see that the loaf is a little bit thinner. If you want to keep that volume in the loaf, you want to go more towards like a 15, 16 inch. And there we have it. So we're going to let this prove for 10 minutes and then they're going to go in the oven. Hi, welcome back. Our baguettes have now been baked. We baked them for 38 minutes at 450. And I wanted to show the difference between the baguette that was baked and the baguette pan. As you can see, it's very round. It holds a beautiful round shape. And then the one that was baked freeform in the skillet has more of a flat bottom and it spreads. So you can see the difference. Both still quite beautiful. Both have a beautiful crunch. And both beautifully baked inside. That concludes our baguette tutorial for today. Please feel free to reach out should you have any questions. We would love to see your photos of your baguette.